Excellent. Welcome to Truth in Telecoms. We have what I'd say is a seismic event. We have Johnny and Dean on the same podcast. So this is going to be fun.
That
Dean, how are
t-shirt,
you?
that t-shirt wins already. Sorry.
I gotta give you the backdrop on the t-shirt, Dean, because I know you're busy out there in the big leagues, and I was just explaining to you and Alan. We're in the little leagues, but you're in the big leagues. I read a statistic on CTIA. $591 was spent in the last 3 years on God knows what, over 54 billion by each operator, which I'll ask you about later. But look, we're all suck fish, right? So suck fish comes from sucker fish. Sucker fish is those little fish that sit on the sharks in the water and they eat off them. So we had a show way back when, and Noah Rafalco was on. He said, "Oh, you're all sucker fish." And then Alan couldn't say sucker fish. So he started saying suck fish, which is quite funny, actually. So he started this whole thing on suck fish, which is really the whole ecosystem. And it really will correlate back to your brilliant piece where you started really getting into math and the kind of math that I understand. I'm a numbers guy mainly, that's had to painfully learn a lot of the technology stuff that's difficult that you guys know. But so yeah, I mean, look, I first met Dean. My first entree into LinkedIn is I saw this guy Dean Bubley. I said, "Hey, Rick Joyce said you got to sign up for LinkedIn." I'm like, "Okay." So you can all blame Rick Joyce for anything I've done on LinkedIn. And so I made a comment on his post, and I didn't know, didn't know his face, and he proceeded to just whiplash me, like it was like relentless. And he's even like texting me like, "Who are you? Who do you think you are?" I'm like, "Oh man!" So Dean taught me the art of arguing back with facts, and so you can blame Dean for giving me my LinkedIn attitude. I'm like, okay, I better talk when I know what I'm talking about. But look, me and Alan started this podcast a little over, close to a year and a half ago. Not a year, 2 months, year, 3 months. And originally, it was because of me not being able to get attention about what happened with Bill Peters, the campaign registry, billions of dollars being stolen. I mean, we went to the White House, we went to the FBI, went to the NSA, and we didn't understand why nobody was hearing us. So I started this podcast with Alan. Simultaneously, I said, "Alan, I really like innovators. Let's start doing some innovators." So we get a lot more credit or attention around what we do on Truth and Telecoms, which has kind of gone overboard. Needless to say, I mean, I had an intervention session with a couple of my buddies, and this is kind of like a slash quasi intervention session for Alan as well. So, Alan, you're an intervention.
Okay.
And because, I looked on Dean's website and I see, okay, Dean Bubley, and Dean, you list Alan as an advisor and partner.
From time to time, to be fair, my website, I haven't really done very much with my website for about, I don't know, it's 5 years or 8 years or something like that.
Must
But
have been getting on for a
it's still my
decade.
main platform. But
So,
I've,
so,
spoke,
so
I've spoken at loads of Alan's events over the years, and it's always been fun, and I've been part of that community. So yeah, Johnny, one thing is I used to spend a lot more time doing work on sort of UCAS and CCAS and generally voice and real-time comms. I was the first analyst who wrote anything on WebRTC
mm,
back in the day and CPAS. I might have some of the blame behind Ericsson acquisition of Vonage because 10 years ago I was in a strategy workshop with some of the then execs at Vonage with another name that Alan will remember, Martin Geddes, and we were talking to them about strategy, and we suggested to Vonage that they look at this new CPAS thing 10 years ago. And then there was a slide which had the word
well,
network in the middle
did
of
you
a
get paid? Because
cloud.
let me tell you something. So I go back to Vonage way back when, with the
Yeah.
commercials, the do. I come from the coin card industry and voice, right? We hated them then because they took all the India traffic from us, right? We used to sell all coin cards in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Immigrants made calls on coin cards, which is a $2 billion industry, and that's where I come from. But it's funny. So you saved Vonage because Vonage wasn't even worth $1 million. Quick segue to you. They should have paid you because a year ago I met, well, not a year ago, 8 months ago, I met this guy, Christopher Kipper. He is from Legion Capital Partners, and he was the activist investor in Vonage. They were there for 5.5 years. They're the ones that now got into Twilio. So I had a call with him because I'm on Wall Street. I have a lot of relationships here. And we started talking. I'm like, what are you doing in Twilio? And just talking to him about it. And he told me the whole story on Vonage. So Vonage ran a process. The next buyer for Vonage was $1 billion. They bid $6.2 billion. The guy was telling me we didn't know what to do. We were trying to close it so fast because we were like hoping they didn't realize it. So the bankers ran such a good process that they were able to fleece Ericsson for $6.2 billion.
I mean, for me, I was one of the few analysts who understood Ericsson and the wireless business and also the CPaaS business, because these days I probably spend about 70-80% of my time doing things related to wireless, whether it's 5G and 6G or Wi-Fi or Spectrum, but I still do quite a bit on the communication services side, as well as interconnect and wholesale and fiber and other stuff. And so when that announcement came out, everyone was scratching their heads, and I'm like, well, this could be about two things. Either this is Ericsson getting into CPaaS at an expensive price, or it's Ericsson thinking that CPaaS has application in 5G, which it won't, because I knew at the time that most of the developers using CPaaS at that point, it was, and I stereotyped it as a dentist doing appointment reminder SMSs, and I'm like, that developer's not going to be buying a 5G network slice.
Let me ask you a question. Where is Ericsson from?
Sweden. Well,
okay. Now let me tell you
from Sweden, but these days it's also got enough stars and stripes because I've been to its Texas factory, so it's positioning itself as a sort of transatlantic vendor.
Let me tell you what happened. So Ericsson publicly traded on the markets. I think it was like $13 billion market cap. They look at Twilio at $80 billion market cap. Then they look at Cinch at a $20 billion market cap, and Cinch was nothing but an aggregator. SoftBank put some money into them. So you had Cinch that had absolutely zero infrastructure that Ericsson had. You had Ericsson, a legacy company, and they took a shot and bet on Twilio. The minute they bet on Twilio, things went south. So you went from $450 a share down to 42, right? So over $60 billion were lost. So Ericsson made a Wall Street move. That was just bankers and shareholders and the public markets in the U.S., because that's what I follow. I follow the public markets. So where you and Alan follow everything else, and now I do because of you guys and Alan and an acquisition I had with Tintech years ago and trying to buy the campaign registry. But mainly, all I talk about is, all I really understand is carts, probably, EE to earnings, whatever.
Yeah.
All that type of stuff is what I look at because I care about watching the money. T-Mobile's now trading at 28 times earnings today, $303 billion market cap. It's insane. So you should have got paid from the guys at Vonage. I think one of them is at the Cloud Communication Alliance. You may want to go shake him down. They got a dinner down in St. Petersburg going on. But it's amazing how things intersected. So I've been in telecom. I'm pretty old. I don't want to say how old I am, but I'm pretty old. I've been around since the mid 1990s. I grew up when everybody in America owned AT&T stock. There was only one carrier. It was AT&T, right? And then that got broken up. But in the backwards to a segue on your brilliant numbers and talking about all these numbers that people throw around, they have to throw that around. Because if they don't throw that around, there's no funding. Where did $591 billion go in the last 3 years? And for what?
And to be honest, this is where I've come into this, and I've been following numbers and metrics from telecoms for a while, mostly because I just get fed up with some of the internal, not even the financial and Wall Street side of it, but just people using the wrong ways to measure things. And this goes back to 10, 12 years ago. I used to run workshops on the future of voice communications. And it always made me wonder why we have this metric of a minute. And why does everyone talk about how many minutes? I mean, we don't talk about the value of a movie in terms of how long it is. Frankly, some of them are too long. Some conversations are too long on the phone as well. And actually, often the most valuable conversations are the short ones. So why do we talk about minutes? And that got me thinking that what would be a better way of measuring phone calls or communications? I was like, well, actually, the conversation is probably the quantum. And it's like, how many conversations did the network carry? Would be a much more useful way of doing it, but it's hard. And so then I from there, and I looked at sort of mobile data traffic and a few other things. And ideally, we would have good metrics, whereas most of the time we use easy metrics. Some stuff is easy to count or easy to report, or there's historic numbers for it, and people don't want to change their spreadsheets. But increasingly, and especially with the rise of whether it's AI or automation, we ought to be able to sit down with a blank sheet and go, what would be the most meaningful numbers for this business or this industry if we could start with a blank sheet? Because I think that in a lot of cases, we've now got an opportunity to do that, but we're too lazy or entrenched, and we stick with the same numbers, either because they're simple or because you can just make them up and fabricate them. And
they correlate to Wall Street. Unless you can quantify. When I was in the calling card business, we had 5,000 country codes, and I had to look at the average length of call, and because we were buying things for 20 cents and selling them for 10 cents, and based on how long you talked. So there's no way to monetize. Like, look now, they're charging per text on IP, and SMS is an information service. So they're charging per text on an information service.
But if you think about right. But text now looks in a lot of cases like instant messaging. And if you think how a lot of people write messages, it's you can break up a sentence into 4 chunks. Is it worth one sentence or 4 chunks?
Well, you're going to see a historical shift, and we've seen it with WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp has 3 billion users, right?
Yeah.
And all the other chats, and doesn't matter what flavor it's going to be. iMessage, right? It doesn't matter. But my point being is it's already transitioned there. But I want to segue back to Mr. Alan Quayle, because we're here partly for an intervention. So, look, Alan gave me a platform. We started this platform. We've had close to 1 million views. I don't know who the hell these people are. A lot of them came from Wall Street because, I happen to be picking and calling where the flow was going as far as just knowing, like, Twilio doesn't make money. They'll never make money. Their books are cooked. I mean, sorry, Twilio. I'm supposed to be nice. But their books are cooked. And they buried their COGS in their marketing costs. And that's why you see the whole thing came down. Now, hedge fund guys came in there, pumped it up from 50 to 150. They made a couple of $100 million. Moez Kazan, we talk about it a lot on our show. But look, I think I'm tired. A couple 2 months ago, I called out for you and Everybody Loves Jeff Holdner to call peace with Meth. You guys tried. I don't know what happened. Look, Meth has a lot of good companies there. They've got, G-Money and Cinch. They got Twilio. They got Cineverse. They got TikTok. They got Huawei. They got Somos. They got iConnective. They got so many companies part of it. And Meth does a lot of good things. And my question to you, Alan Quayle, is you love America, right?
Yes.
But you don't like the leader.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So why can't I love Meth?
Of course you can.
Okay. But why can't you love Meth? Why can't you embrace it? Because of one guy. Because the Meth members, and look, they're not going to stop doing what they're doing. They're all hustling to make money. And that gets back to Dean Bubley's post.
Here, I've got to do a quick disambiguation. Because
are you going to use those words on me? I don't have a dictionary.
There's 2 Meths. And I literally, before this, got off a call with the OG Meth. So going back about 20 years, there was the Mobile Entertainment Forum, which is now the Mobile Entertainment Forum that you're talking about. And there was the Metro Ethernet Forum. And they're the people who do sort of network control and APIs for sort of real hardcore stuff of sort of, big fiber and Ethernet connections between data centers and cloud and hyperscalers. They're the OG Meth, and the other upstarts, well, I'll let you and Alan discuss them.
But the OG Meth is great. How many members do they have? I mean, are they
200? Yeah.
Okay, so they're big, but they're not out there, poking fingers. Yeah, so they're not out there doing.
We're more fixed focus, so that's between data centers, so it's big fat pipes with gigabytes. They're not as mobile centric, shall we say?
But it comes back to all the good things I've witnessed Alan Quayle do and myself with our Innovator podcast. We've had some companies on here that have greatly benefited. I've seen Alan go out of his way and get people jobs. And we've gotten successful people placed. We've helped people put together pieces that they're able to raise money on. I mean, Wadero is now with Rick Joyce, who was a former chief counsel, head of cybersecurity for the Coast Guard. He's moving into the U.S. And so there's so many positive things that have happened here. And it really bothers me that, Alan's being kind of isolated and picked on. And my whole thing was, look, I'm going to stop Truth in Telecoms as far as being venomous, right? This whole venomous thing, like when I met Alan, he was an analyst. You're an analyst too, but you're not venomous, right? Me, I took it to him. I'm like, I'm going for the throat. You know what I mean? Because I'm going for the throat against things that personally happen. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm done because I have a lot of friends at MEF. I just announced a new position with Wadero, and a lot of the MEF members like it. A lot of them are not allowed to. So I just want Alan to come back and understand that it's not about MEF. It's about one person there that's in charge, and he won. He's a king. He won. It's his country. It's his game, and that's it. And I want to just put that past us, and I want to keep going forward. But I want to transition. So that's my piece. Maybe, Dean, you could talk to Alan afterwards. There's going to be no peace, obviously, because the guy wants to kill us, and I can't blame him. But he should want to
persona non grata as well with that individual. Yeah. And, the thing is, he's under the mistaken impression that his ego is bigger than mine.
Well, he had that. Wait, he had that with me too. So that's two of us, and then three. Alan is still hitting him. Like we'll keep going.
It's Google that's hitting him. I'm just reporting what Google is saying.
And listen, my point being is, he goes after Bubley. He goes after you. He's going after me.
And
come
Scott,
on, really, buddy?
Come on, the nicest person.
Like the nicest kid in the world. No, there's a lot of more guys. But at the end of the day, the MEF is it's just a place. It's a catering hall. So the OG of MEF may be more organized. This new MEF is just a catering hall. I mean, there was a piece out today with that pirate guy that he wrote about, USA and China, and how everything is messed up. And
that's where were you a year ago? You don't know, Dean.
Where were you 2 years ago? You know what I mean? He's writing hit pieces on us because my group is like, hey, wait a minute. It's not probably a good idea for China to be inside the network of the campaign registry. That's how I got involved here. So I think, look, I'm going to continue doing positive Truth in Telecoms and Innovators with Alan Quayle because it's been one of the most satisfying things in my life. I've watched Alan get at least 30 people jobs, and I've helped along that. I think I'm a part of it. I watched us enable companies. We did the first podcast for VComs. We blew it up. Ken Huron was over there. Ken Huron went from UIB, and whatever anybody knows it out there, he blew up VComs on social media because he's really good at it. Now it's all the rage. Jeff Pulner, what, he start the foundation? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're hearing about it. So look, we do a lot of positive things here, and I'm not going to leave here until that positive image is in front. So I just want you to kind of intervene in Alan, because Alan's going to keep going. I think his ego might be bigger than mine and yours.
I doubt it.
Dean? But so you could do that offline, and not going after you is suicidal. But,
I mean, to some extent, Alan needs to make his own decision on this. So for me, to be honest, I've got so many other things that I need to be doing that
you're in the big leagues.
Cycles to spend on that particular.
Look, you've got governments calling you and asking you about your pieces. So you're in a different league, which is what I want to get to. So now, as I start to go into the big leagues, I just want to have a conversation, a couple of questions for you on that brilliant piece, because man, it was just staggering. And the way I want to give you a counter argument to why those numbers are all fake. From a guy that hangs out with hedge fund guys, traders. If those numbers weren't fudged, there'd be no money coming in. Think about it. T-Mobile's market cap was less than Twilio over a decade ago. Now their market cap is $303 billion, and they're trading at 28 times revenue. Is it worth that? All anything is worth is what somebody's willing to pay, right? And without those numbers, I don't think the ecosystem flourishes. Telecom is flourishing, where I remember a time where it was dead. I remember a time everything was trading at one-time revenue, half-time revenue.
But there's an interesting thing there. That some of these numbers, if you look at, for example, the CTAA talks about the CTIA. I've picked a bit of a fight with recently, and a few of their friendly
I
analysts
don't
have
even know who these guys are. Let me
and
tell
the
you something.
CTI is the
Who
Telecoms
are they?
Industry Association, and interestingly, they're in this big debate, essentially saying we want more spectrum, which telecoms companies or mobile companies always do. But interestingly, when they do their calculations and say, oh, there's a gap in what we have compared to what China has or Europe or whatever, they actually leave out T-Mobile's big chunk of mid-band spectrum from its calculations. Yeah, and I've called
Wow.
them out on that. And so, ironically, what you just described of T-Mobile's value is discounted by CTA or ignored because it doesn't fit their current policy narrative around mid-band spectrum. Meanwhile, T-Mobile is making
Does
bank on
T-Mobile know
exactly
this?
that asset they're ignoring.
Yeah.
Do they know this? Because they're the best run company, telecom company I've ever seen.
I pointed it out, and I'm sure there's been some awkward conversations because I was like, here's a quote from T-Mobile describing this spectrum in 2.5 gigahertz as mid-band, and it's completely ignored by CTIA because
Well,
it
they're
was
going to have a
mess up
hard
their
time. They're
comparisons.
going to have a hard time getting that spectrum stuff with the with the new people in charge. We can't say political things here because then YouTube blocks us. So we say orange guy. We use different code words here.
Euphemisms, yeah.
Yeah,
Huh.
but no, that's pretty. I mean, look, CTIA is just there. Rick Joyce explained it to me early on. Look, it's just there to make sure the carriers don't get caught in any antitrust suits. I used to go to CTIA meetings and they would have the whole speech because I used to own a messaging hub team. So I owned the third messaging hub in the USA that I restructured. So there was 3 hubs in the USA, Cineverse, SAP, and Irish Wireless. I restructured the company, didn't want to be a messaging, and restructured a company out of Germany, Tintec. And then I had to come back because I found the only 2 dumb Germans in Germany. You have no idea the disaster that I had over there. I have another shirt where I try to sell Tintec to every company I know. Like, kiss my Tintec, please buy Tintec. Anyhow, we've had 4 different sales broken and long story. But I want to go back to this. So, look, we're all suck fish in one way or another. Because without the ecosystem flourishing, you're not going to get big money for your speaking events. People aren't going to pay for your opinion and your analytical view of things because it's priceless. So my question to you on there is, how come you're not partnering with a hedge fund? How come you're not? I've been approached. I've had guys. I was investigated. Like, what are you doing here? Are you shorting? Are you doing this? I was investigated. I had 78,000 views on one podcast. I was like, who are these people? I'm like, probably the investigators. I want to know if I'm shorting things. You know what I mean? And quite frankly, they were. So, but I wasn't, of course, because I'm a moron. But I want to know, how come? Have you ever thought about using your analytical skills in that way?
I spent 2 years as an equity analyst around 2000, 2002. But in fact, there was even
when nobody was making money.
Frankly, the FT nailed it. The FT had a gossip column item which says news reaches us at the, and I quote, effervescently named Mr. Dean Bubley is joining Credit Lyonnais. This must be the froth at the top of the market, and they were right. They were absolutely FT got it absolutely nailed on. I started work in the City of London the day the market peaked, which then screwed me over because as of the day I was employed, any trading I did for myself, I had to go through the compliance team, which went home at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so if I had US stocks, I couldn't sell them to the next day. So I spent 2 years as an analyst in the city, basically saying these are quite good companies, but they're overvalued. Sell that one first. And then it turned out that all the stocks that I covered, they were small cap, and then they became micro cap. And then when there was like a round of redundancies, I worked out that our market makers would have had to turn over something like 40% of the entire market cap of the stocks I covered just to pay my salary. And
wow. Wow.
And at that point, it was fairly obvious that I was not going to be around for very long.
Look, you've got the mobile operators in the U.S. alone are nearing a $700 billion market cap. I mean, obviously, we know about Apple with the $3.6 trillion market cap, and we know about the big techs. But I mean, for mobile, in our world, all the valuations are down. You've got Cinch trading under 1-time revenue. Twilio's trading at 3 or 4 times revenue now, and that's going to tank even more so because they just keep screwing things up, and people figured it out. It's more of a It's more of a GameStop meme stock. Twilio is like a meme stock for Wall Street right now. It's up and but you're dealing, you're at your level with the information you have. I sent it to a buddy of mine. He's like, "Who is this guy? Can I talk to him?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. He's a top analyst in this space, so I know you're getting calls on it." So I was just curious.
I do speak to some investors, but I'm not like plugged into hedge funds on a regular basis. Simply because whenever
hedge funds is a bit. It's all very much.
They obviously do spend lots of money investing, but actually trying to get money as an advisor to them.
Yeah.
I had this today where I send a purchase order which has gone into a black hole for a very small amount for someone to come to a workshop I'm running, and just to actually get, as an advisor to a financial institution, they might be good with money, but they're also
they're
often
tight.
It's to get it out of them.
You're not talking to the right guys.
Yeah,
Probably
I mean, GLG I found is the easiest to basically get cash out relatively simply.
No, for like an hour call or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
So, absolutely. I do target that sector sometimes, but frankly,
the GLG guys. Yeah, look, I can't tell you. Tata's been trying to sell the campaign registry for $300 million. We've talked to 32 Tata groups. You're toast. You ain't selling it. You can't give it away. You're done, and that's what you get because they're calling all our guys. So. Because it's very easy to just knock that value down. But that's another ball game. But, so some of the other things on analysts that you view credible or not credible, some of these other things, I think it's interesting the way you look at it. Sometimes I talk to analysts so long and I see your opinion, and they're very similar. You're very aligned in a lot of ways of your thinking. Is that because you're both from the UK or you both know what you're doing?
Bit of both. Cynicism always helps goes a little way, I think. But it's also sort of poking and prodding things and going, not everything's always straightforward.
Yeah.
What happens if you double click on that number? What happens? And I think interesting to me, whether it's analysts, I think in the future it's also going to be our silicon friends. You go to an AI and say these statistics. Can you have a shot at breaking them down? They don't publish the breakdown, but have a go. How much of this is normal mobile service? How much of it is home fixed wireless? How much of it is enterprise?
I use it now.
Yeah, I think that we're going to get the situation where some of these companies are going to have to disclose a lot more granularity because if not, people are just going to estimate it, or they're going to use a robot to estimate it. So it's increasingly going to be hard to excuse using. I've got a big thing about aggregated numbers where people will give you one big top line number and you think, well, actually, there's 3 or 4 very separate components of those that you're not disclosing.
Yeah.
And you say, the top line number grew. And I'm like, yeah. That's only because segment 1 grew and 2 and 3 and 4 fell. And we know that 2 and 3 and 4 are probably more valuable. Why are you not providing the breakdown? Commercial confidentiality. No, it's not.
It's like Twilio.
Twilio, the underlying picture.
90% of Twilio's revenue was messaging, but they were the industry called them a CPaaS company, but they never said they were a CPaaS company. They were on Kramer, CNBC, and they were a SaaS company. And the whole pitch to Wall Street, because I watched it in real time, I watched them say, the margins are around 52, 48, but they're going to come up. Right now, they're just losing money to get more revenue. And they literally played this game. They inflated the stock all the way out. Bang. Then it went from 450 down, crashing over a period of time.
The equivalent I'm seeing in the mobile industry is everyone says, the data traffic grew by 25% or whatever it is, but you back it out and you back up the numbers and you think, well, actually what you're saying is that your fixed wireless traffic grew massively and your normal smartphone traffic grew single digits percentages in some cases. And the thing is that fixed wireless at the moment is doing quite well, particularly in the US, but one subscriber for fixed wireless uses 20 to 30x the data of a normal mobile broadband smartphone subscriber. So when they say our total aggregate traffic grew, what they're basically saying is we sold lots of fixed wireless, which soaks up unused capacity, which we haven't been able to sell for any other more valuable purpose. And I think that it's that type of it's I don't know if I call it disingenuous, but it's not the whole truth.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot. And if so I'm a big advocate. Whenever you see a big number, there should be someone in the audience, or if it's a press conference, or someone online at a webinar going, how does that break down into one and two and three, and what
Yeah.
the trend's looking like on that? Because that will give you a lot more color and an understanding of how sustainable it is, and also how profitable.
Yeah.
Because all a few years ago, the telcos were all saying how revenue per bit, which is a stupid metric of its own, is going down.
Yeah.
And now they're happily selling products with 30x more bits for the same price.
Mhm.
You can't complain that the revenue per bit's going down if you're selling 30 times more for the same
Well, it's the
money.
subscription model. I mean, that's the key is
Yeah.
basically pay your subscription fee, and how much you use is just a connectivity issue.
And also, interestingly, the investment community, they're fixated on a couple of numbers like ARPU, avenue revenue per
Yeah.
subscriber, per user, per
Oh, I
subscriber.
hate it.
Yeah.
Whereas, in fact, it's stopping people using more innovative pricing and business models. So, for example, at one point, I had a fixed wireless connection as a backup for my broadband,
Mhm.
and I didn't use it at all because it turned out that my fixed broadband was working. It had no downtime. So my usage over the year was zero. And then I got a bill the next year. They said, "Oh, we're putting your price up 15%." And I'm like, "What? It should be like an insurance thing where I
Exactly.
get a discount because I haven't used my insurance the previous year. I didn't make a claim. I didn't make a claim on the wireless. So why not give me a discount? I'm a low risk user. I'm not
Yeah.
costing you anything on the network." And but if the operator turn around and say, "Oh, we're now transitioning to a model that looks like the insurance industry, and we're selling you, you know, backup insurance, network resilience insurance,"
The minute
they
they say
wouldn't be
the
able
word
to price it
insurance,
right.
run.
The market wouldn't understand it. Be like, "Oh, what's this new thing? We can't fit it in the spreadsheet."
Yeah. Exactly.
It's funny. You hear the new orange people going after everything. You don't hear a word about the insurance industry, though. You don't hear a word about that. You notice everywhere. So I have a buddy in insurance too, and he pointed out to me, he goes, he ain't coming after us. I mean, there's one company that in New York wanted to like lower your insurance if you drove under 50 miles a month, whatever type of thing, but they put these things in your car and stuff like that. But I think they're not whatever, but they get slammed down. The insurance industry is a powerful group. But they're going to have a big problem now with California. But that's another conversation.
Yeah.
I have one more thing that I really need to ask you. So I watched reports, I watched earning calls, I watched interviews with CEOs. There's a CEO carrier, and he's on there, and I'm watching the guy because I watch body language. I see what they're looking, and the guy he mentioned Elon Musk and his Starlink, and I watched the guy do this. Like he just started squirming. I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on? And I ask different people. I never get the right answer. I know Elon's trying to build his phone, and that's coming out, and he's doing a lot of things. Do you see him making a play on everybody? Is that realistic from a tactical standpoint?
Not really. I think satellite is really interesting and important, but it's still going to be a small fraction of the overall market because you have fundamental constraints on how many satellites you can put in orbit, both in terms of launch and also whether you've got enough orbital slots, and also whether you've got enough radio frequency to communicate both up and down from the satellite. So you've got some fairly hard constraints on capacity.
Yeah.
You've also got some hard constraints on energy. So a satellite is the amount of energy, unless you've got like a nuclear power plant on it, like you're essentially gated by the area of solar cells you can put into space on the satellite.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the number, but it's sort of it's I don't know, 10 kilowatts or whatever the number is for a big solar array. So there's a limited amount you could do in terms of the radio processing, in terms of the compute, all the rest of it. Obviously, you can put thousands of satellites up, but ultimately, say compared to mobile, the world has, I think, about 5 million mobile cell sites, and at the moment, Starlink has about 8,000 satellites.
Yeah.
And roughly speaking, you could say one satellite equals one mobile cell site. So, maybe in future they'll improve the capacity so it equals 5 or it equals 10. But the number of zeros compared to the world's terrestrial, that's the cellular, the mobile capacity, and then compared to fiber or fixed.
Yeah.
No, and I think the other thing is there's some hard constraints on satellite connectivity for in-building wireless use.
Yeah.
So unless you've got some sort of repeater for the satellite's frequencies, if you're outside or by a window, it's fine.
Big problem in New York. I mean, I live in New York.
Oh, anyway, I mean, it's and interesting is you'll have to say, oh well, we've got a big antenna on the satellite. We can essentially do beams that go through the walls, but that's fine. But you've then got it's not direct to the cell device; it's direct from the cell device back to space.
That's the problem.
And if you think your phone has got to ratchet up the power to then get to 500 miles in orbit or whatever the number is, through walls, through ceilings. It ain't going to happen. I mean, even if it does it once, it'll.
What if he turns around and creates? I mean, I think he's trying. I think he's trying to get spectrum. I can't. I don't know if that's the case or not.
And for certain things, that's great. But you one of the things that I sometimes look at is the difference between the real world of the physics of whether it's wireless or fiber or anything else and what people are claiming.
Yeah.
And so, for example, a lot of modern buildings now are being made with windows that are essentially reflective of normal cell signals.
Yeah.
And in fact, the modern buildings are 10 times, even 100 times worse than the old ones in terms. For the people who remember their high school physics, we're creating buildings that are Faraday cages. That you will need a dedicated system inside the building. And I think the number globally is I can't remember what the number is off the top of my head. It's like we've got 250 billion square meters of indoor floor space. Yeah, about 3/4 of it is residential, the rest of it's offices and factories and retail. And only a tiny fraction has a dedicated in-building system. And talk about metrics. There are no metrics for what proportion of that floor space has decent indoor wireless. No one really measures it. No one really publishes the number. Whenever you see a stat on network coverage, it's outdoor coverage.
Right.
Outdoor. And if you're lucky, they'll assume that, we think that the average house that's made of wood, you'll get this much coverage, or if it's made of brick or concrete. But it's estimates.
Yeah.
No one actually.
Well, how many times I'm in my house or whatever and I can't get a signal?
Exactly.
Well, Wadaro gives you that measurement in your home. So don't forget.
Wadaro's a different new technology, but what he's basically correlating it to Starlink and how the way I'm viewing his answer. Yeah, he helps the carriers actually. It's definitely a changing company. Join it.
Ideally, they would use if it's. I had a look at the Wadara, but also others who do this sort of in-building stuff. You'd either use some statistical metric to work out you seem to be at the place which we think is your house, and we'll assume that if you're not in the garden, you're inside. And we think you're probably in the garden 20% of the time and in the house 80%. And so we can make a reasonable assumption that any measurement we take there is going to be indoors or at your primary place of work. There's probably more sophisticated ways you could say this is an indoor measurement or outdoor measurement. Maybe some phones, I don't know if they've got a pressure sensor or there's probably some way you could try and work it out.
But I look forward to introducing you to Robert. That's a geek out. But my question is, because I have a lot of people saying, Elon's going to take over mobile. And I keep telling them, no, he's not. Because I keep hearing the same thing. But unless I hear from somebody like you who actually understands it.
I think it's got an interesting role to play. But the whole, I keep seeing people on social media say, everything, we're not going to need fiber. We're not going to need terrestrial mobile. It'll all be done from space. And I'm like, no way. It doesn't work. Sorry, there's about 3 zeros.
There's a lot of highly educated people on Wall Street saying those things.
You look at the physics of it and you think, and you count satellites, you count how many will need to be in orbit. Actually, the technical word is on orbit, I learned, to provide equivalent capacity. And then you ask them about the uplink as well as the downlink, and you ask them about the Earth stations, and you go, how many Earth stations do you know? And they go, what? There's absolutely huge value. But the idea that we're going to be communicating via space all the time from a phone with a small battery going 500 miles up to orbit is nonsense.
It's ludicrous.
It's
absolutely
important. If you're in a rural area and there's no good coverage, it might be cheaper to do it via satellite than build a tower on the top of the mountain. Yeah. Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
If you're on a ship, absolutely. There's no real alternative.
Yeah.
If you're in Japan and there's an earthquake and the terrestrial cell towers go down, you might use satellite. You might use what's called a high altitude platform, like a stratospheric balloon or something as
Yeah.
backup. The Japanese are specifically looking at this for disaster resilience.
Yeah.
But in terms of day to day, you've got a football stadium full of people. There's no way that you're going to have 30,000 people using satellite phones in the same place at the same time. Ain't gonna happen.
Exactly.
Oh,
And the reason he's
I'm
sitting
glad.
uncomfortably is he knows the reality of how few customers actually need that satellite coverage. It's a lot of hype, but actually,
Well,
because of
I
the
think
availability,
during like the disasters, whether it been the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
fire or hurricane. So for disasters,
Oh,
I know because I know
yeah,
guys in it down in the Carolinas and
yeah,
Florida,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and
That
it was very
had
helpful.
the satellite link.
yeah,
Absolutely.
totally. For
In
that,
those special
absolutely.
situations.
And also for
And it seems
backup
like we have
themselves
one
from
every
cell
week.
towers. If you can't get fiber, if you can't get fiber through the swamp or whatever it is to the cell site,
Yep.
that you can go, or it's in rural Africa and you don't want to string a cable 100 miles out into the bush. Absolutely, you'll do satellite connection.
Yep.
So
Oh, yeah.
so satellite is again it's one of these things where services are going to be much more valuable in future than they are today, but they're still not going to be more than a tiny fraction of the
Yep.
trillion odd dollars worth of telecoms we do globally. Yeah,
Exactly.
so if you're an investor, going from 2% to 6% is a big deal, but it's still 6%.
Then what's the financial play for Starlink for Elon? Because he's got Tesla at $1 billion, right? He's got what is the and I know some things are not all money for him. Like I mean, he
Yeah.
bought Twitter, which was a disaster, still a disaster financially, but other reasons why he bought it, which we won't get into here. But what's the play? What's the play for him? What's the business play? Just he wanted to do it. He raised money because he could. Like, what's
Um,
the long game? What's the long game on Starlink?
well, I think the long game of Starlink is funding SpaceX for all the other
Okay.
stuff he wants to do with SpaceX. I mean, for me, if I had to view, I mean, he's well, certainly he's stated his objective is Mars, right? And to do that, you need some cash flow to build more and bigger rockets.
Yeah.
And if essentially Starlink provides the cash flow that helps fund the rocket business, or as well as doing launch, because there's only a certain market for launch services. So if he can add value with communication services or maybe Earth observation, and there's probably a bunch of stuff for government agencies in there as well, then those are the services that help to justify and underpin the rocket and the launch side
Yeah.
of space for the space business. I have to say, I'm not I don't really understand all the economics of satellite and
Uh,
space industry, but I think that's how it probably works.
and I got one more question that I wanted to ask you about regarding. Obviously, we know all the money that got pumped into AI, and we saw the recent snafu with DeepSeek, right? And it caused I think $1 trillion a day lost on the markets. And where do we all know AI is beneficial? We all know it's real, and we all know. But I mean, where do you see that? Do you see it as doomsday as everybody else, or do you see it? I'm just curious how Dean Bubley looks and thinks about
I'm
that.
I'm cautious optimist, I would probably
Okay.
say. I think that there probably needs to be some decent oversight, but I'm not worried about the sudden super intelligence emerging and wiping us out. In the same way, I'm not worried day to day about a gamma ray burster from the next star system or a super volcano or whatever. I've read Nick Bostrom's and other people and Toby Ord's books on existential risk and all this, and and it's up there with nuclear war and pandemics and sort of celestial events. So it's something to keep an eye on. But in the big scheme of things, do I think that's the number one existential risk that we should anchor everything else on? Well, no. But at the same time, I don't think we should be completely complacent. what I'm very hesitant about is this sort of idea that we can regulate every single AI model. And funny enough, as we've had this, I've just had an email that I've been asked to come and sort of speak at an AI event in Brussels. I know that the European AI Act is pretty restrictive, and I know also China has been restrictive on some of the
Robert Viz from Berg moved his company. He moved his company. He got out. And he's got a sick company. He raised $1 billion. He's going. I view him. He's going to be a multi-billion-dollar company. He had to get out of there, and his argument was the restrictive AI.
I think that we're going to, it's going to be one of those things that in 3 years' time, we'll think about AI the same way we think about electricity, and having an AI strategy is going to be no more sensible than having an electricity strategy. Yeah. It's just going to be an ingredient of everything we have, everything we buy, and everything we do.
Exactly.
You don't have a chief electricity officer. I mean, so having a chief AI officer is going to be silly because it's just going to be, it's
going to be funny.
Part of the fabric of all compute, all services, all devices will have some measure of AI-ness.
Yeah.
Some of it will be on board with like a sort of a small model running on your phone or your home gateway or your toaster or whatever. Some of it will be running in the hyperscale cloud and some in some sort of edge devices.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be such a proliferation of different sorts. We're trying to have one legal framework that captures all of it
doesn't make sense because there's so much engineering.
I'm waiting for the AI barber to come in there and give Alan a haircut and shave.
Yeah.
I've seen a 5G robot that's supposed to do shaves, Alan. Yeah,
really? God. Do we break him in?
You have to stand on top of you have to sit in the barber's chair on top of a mountain with the robot doing it. One of the UK mobile operators did this advert of someone getting a shave sitting in a chair at the top of the mountain, and I'm like.
So you're going to be at
one use case
WMC,
for
right?
5G now.
You're going to be at WMC, right?
Sorry?
You're going to be at Mobile World Congress, obviously.
I'm going to be in Barcelona, but not at MWC itself. I've got the way you treat MEF is my attitude towards GSMA. And so I'm doing the fringe thing where I'm going to be downtown in Barcelona.
Oh, so you're fighting with the big boys.
Oh yeah, I've a long-standing beef with them for all sorts of reasons. So I'm not going to their event, but I am going to turn up at the city because that's where all my clients are going to be.
Look, I love meth, please. I love meth, right? Just there's a guy there that doesn't like us and whatever, did a few things, and who cares? I don't really care anymore.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted a methie. I just always wanted it, I just want to be able to say I got a methie. But even those people that are getting methies, like I got a couple of guys who used to work for me and he raised a lot of money. It's important to him. So it's still important. It's important to people to go there, they communicate with business. And so there's good and bad.
I have to say the other thing that I tend to rant about, Johnny, is industry awards. I'm really not a fan of awards.
Yeah.
I think most of them are people patting each other on the back and usually paying a conference organizer for a gong. And
see, my view of awards, I love awards because I was an athlete, right? So I played sports as a kid.
You earned it then. Oh yeah. Whereas if you
absolutely, but there was an award I got that it was rigged. And I didn't get it. And boy, I pissed. And it was, a coach's kid type of thing. So but awards, I think awards are just something that boys who play sports like.
Oh, and that's quite fine. But if you win something, but what I really hate is when I see a press release coming saying we won this award, and I'm like, no, you bought that award.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I also view awards differently. Awards are things that a lot of companies do in order to inflate value, investment, stock price. So it's kind of just it's all one big Ponzi game.
I think
one big rig game.
I think some of the awards are literally fraudulent. I've got a bit of what I call faux awards rather than awards, and one of the reasons I got to be in my bonnet about this is I used to be on various awards committees for events. And I spent lots of time trying to do this, and some of them had really good governance. And I remember for one organization, Alan, this was in our industry, and you probably know what I'm talking about. I spent a lot of time on one set of awards, really going into the details and working out who should win and who shouldn't. And then the same organizer then ran a second awards event where they just gave away gongs to whoever paid for.
Yeah.
I completely devalue. They
Have
basically
you seen
disrespected
my
the
award
hard
show?
work that I put on it, and after that, I'm like, screw you. I'm just going to call you out as sort of doing pay for play.
Yeah.
I know you don't pay attention to my posts. You do see Alan's. But have you seen my award show, the Elon Penis Award?
No, I haven't. I have to look that up.
Alan, can you send him it? You're gonna
Well, you
laugh your ass
edited
off.
it though, so it's no longer elongated.
It's not elongated, but Elon had this.
Yeah,
So
okay. I'll forward that
post,
one on. Yeah.
best penis.
Oh, it's
You
like,
know,
there's a penis post on LinkedIn.
biggest
Is
penis,
Johnny there? Okay, it's Johnny's post.
biggest
Oh.
penis. But that's my award show. I also had best looking. Had the best looking awards. Sexiest person in telecom. So I have fun with it. But I did quite a lot of.
That's good.
I get quite a lot of people that love my posts, which I got to tone down now. And I can't tell you how many I get blocked on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn's getting better. I mean, I'm putting things on now. I'm waiting, okay, I'm like 10 minutes. This is going to get taken down. And they don't take it down.
You've been toning them down and editing them, so I think you're softer than you were at the beginning.
I need to get softer. It's just the vicious kid in me. The Bill Peters stuff that we went through is going to be handled because the authorities are going to handle it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and you know what? Free speech is definitely on the table in the U.S. I think the UFCC is going to have a very big problem with the new administration.
Oh yeah. Dean has to go.
So listen, Dean, I can't thank you enough. I look forward to introducing you to Robert Wakeling, another fellow Brit, and you're going to be really and really geeking out and love to get your eyes on that. But thank you so much, and talk to Alan a little bit. He's got to tone it down.
Speak to you soon, guys.
Thank you both very much. I mean, it's been a lot of fun, and
bye, guys.
We talked about a lot of stuff here, and if anyone wants to reach me, I say LinkedIn's my sort of go-to, and I've got opinions on lots of things. Some of them are even right occasionally. But yeah,
excellent. Thank you so much.
I think you got to do more podcasts with us. I think that's what I think.
Sounds good. Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.